You know what I've been thinking? If we're going to have some type of worldwide pandemic or virus, the Kalikaraji virus that we're having right now isn't really that exciting. Why couldn't it be, a zombie virus or something that turns you into one of these? Welcome to the Extreme Channel. My name is Mr. X. Today we're reviewing an old piece by XM Studios. We're doing this because once again, very few new pieces are coming in. Shipping rates are through the roof right now. It'll cost $500 to $1,000 extra in shipping than it normally does to get a statue right now. So we're going to enjoy some of the current collection. But before we do that, we have some giveaways going on. We're giving away these two Venom statues. Make sure you've liked this video, you've subscribed to the channel, and you've hit that bell notification. Then stay tuned for that 10,000 sub video. Also, we're doing monthly extrizes or extreme prizes. All you have to do is comment on a video. The more videos you comment on, the more likely you are to win. But we're going to jump into the Spider-Man villain from XM Studios. This was made in collaboration with Hive. Hive and XM team up on a lot of stuff. One of my favorites they did is actually the Boba Fett. I've reviewed this statue before. You can check it out here. It's awesome. And some of their new pieces are in collaboration with Hive as well. They made 500 of these. That was the ES or the edition size. And they retailed for 950 Singapore dollars, which is anywhere from 700 to 750 US, plus you usually pay a couple $100 shipping. I don't remember how much I bought him for. I bought him years and years ago. He was one of my first XM pieces, and I still love him to this date. And what's really interesting about this guy is you can actually get him well under retail, and I'm not sure why. There is not a lot of this character made in the 1/4 scale. 1/4 meaning that if you were to see him in real life, he would be exactly 4 times larger than this. And I have him because I have a big Spider-Man collection. It's right over there. You probably see it quite a bit, and I think this is a really underrated piece. Sure, it has its issues that we're going to look at, but nothing that's like, oh, that's bad. It's just not as good as some of the modern technology today and some of the statues they produce. So for being one of the only 1/4 scale lizard men out there, I think it's phenomenal, and I'm excited to have it. But let's dive into the review. We're going to use the extreme scale. We're going to start with concept, and when XM Studios does pieces, 90% of the time, if not higher, it is comic based, and this is no exception. What they've done here is they've really stayed true to Lizard Man. He lives in the sewers, and they show that with the base. There's a lot of things going on, not only that are reminiscent of the sewer, but all this green goo, whether that's sewage or whatever transformed him. And as you move up to Lizard Man, I don't know if you would consider this a museum pose, which means he's posing for a picture, or an action dynamic pose where he's in the middle of an action. It's kind of a mix between both. He's definitely ready to fight. This looks awesome paired off against a Spider-Man, and they show every aspect of him. They show his strength. They show his massive tail, his fierceness. With both of his head portraits you're going to see in a minute. His claws ready to strike. His clothing, because he was a scientist, is torn up. You can see the transformation. They hit everything you would want to, I think, when it comes to a Lizard Man, which again mystifies me why this piece is not more popular. You see it for sale all the time. It's a great concept. It pairs well with any Spidey collection, whether you want to do a museum or whether you want to do an action. The size is massive, so it shows his presence, although that may be a design issue we're going to talk about. I give the concept an X. I think it's a perfect concept. I can't think of anything I would do differently. As we move in to talk about design on this piece, you're going to have to forgive me because some of this I frankly just don't remember. It was so long ago. First, let's talk about the pieces that he comes in. The base is one piece. This iron right here is a separate piece. Very, very strong magnets. His tail goes up in his ass. That can't feel good. And I remember this specifically, even though it was a long time ago, getting this up there and in to stick in was just a shit show. No pun intended. He has two different portraits, so let's look at those. So here's the picture of the portrait I have displayed. And the other portrait I actually left in the box, so it's in my warehouse somewhere, but you can take a look at it here. So obviously we will just do close-ups on the one I currently have. And then his arms are also separate pieces, but pretty easy assembly. And I'm sure XM Studios had a book with it, as they usually do. With two different portrait switch outs, there is a slight neck seam. Check it out right here. But it is nothing noticeable, and especially if you're looking at the front of the statue, you don't see it at all. So really, everything is constructed really well, good engineering. I just have a few things that I would have done differently. I love his presence from a conceptual standpoint, but But from a space standpoint, it's a killer. This is a space killer. It takes up the place of 2 1/4 scale statues, of normal 1/4 scale statues like Sideshow Premium format. So that's a disadvantage. He's also extremely heavy. The other big issue I have with him is you want to display him straight on like this, but then you can't see that snout of his portrait. And I think he looks much cooler to the side, but if you display him from the side, if he's not facing anyone, it looks kind of dumb. So those are very, very minor things, but just some criticism. I guess another thing, this might tie a little bit into paint and sculpt, but let's talk about it in design. The sewer water down here should have been more of a transparent resin. It should have been a little bit more clear. It looks just like crap, and not in a bad way, but not in a good way either. So I think that's a disadvantage. So I think with that, design-wise, there is some decent engineering going on. The tail is fit really well and stayed that entire time. Everything's sculpted. That's smart. Design, I'm gonna give it a 4. It's a rail for design. Usually when I can't think of too much to improve, that's when it gets the higher score. Lately, I've been forgetting to measure things because this has been up in the bedroom. So let's do this right now. His widest point is probably about 21.5 inches, which is wider than the base. And I'll measure the base here for you. The diameter on the base is approximately 16.5, 17 inches. And then the deepest point is probably about 18 inches. And from the bottom of the base to the top is 19 inches or so. For exact measurements, go to XM Studio's website. But let's dive into the paint and sculpt now. And we'll start at the bottom, move towards the top, and kind of talk about them together. And I think this is where the piece had some opportunity. Again, like I said at the beginning, it's not bad. It's just an older piece, and you see some more advancements in the pieces that are released today. But let's look at this copper metallic sewer aspect they have going on. There's not a lot of coloring to this. It's browns and reds, and that's about it. And it seems kind of boring. I'm not a fan of the texture they put on it. It doesn't seem very calculated. It kind of seems like an afterthought. And then when you look at some of these other pieces, like this red beam, it looks okay. I like the fact they added some scratch marks, but it still has that same boring color. The big platform he's standing on, same exact comments I would have. Boring color. The texture doesn't look very planned. He has a grate on the back that he's kind of sitting on, and this is metal, but it looks plastic, which is crazy to me. Usually you can get plastic that looks like metal. And here's some close-ups of that sewage. Real sewage doesn't look like this. I like how it's flowing in different directions, but it is so thick.
That's what she said.
And the coloring on it, real sewage doesn't look like this. So I think there was some opportunity there. I like how they have it pouring out of the pipe over here, splashing out. I think the concept's a lot better than the execution, but the execution's not bad. And let's look at Lizard, because you're gonna see kind of that same concept. His feet, he has awesome, scaly, textured skin all over. It's on his feet, you'll see it on his arms and his legs. I love how big his claws are, both on his toenails here, and then you'll see that on his hands as well. Makes him more fierce. Shiny enamel, looks really good. And as you move up his legs, he seems like a really skinny guy actually. You will see around his torso it's a little bit more fit, but his legs and arms, his appendages seem really skinny. And as you move up, you see more of that skin, and then you move on to his pants. First, I like how they're sculpted. They're ripped. There's some great texture of lines running down, lots of folds and creases. Some crazy stuff going on. Reminds me of Hulk pants a little bit because of how they're ripped and the color of them, but it looks good. And if you move up, I wish they would have chose a different color for his shirt. It's a different color of purple, but I like how ripped up it is. It's showing his chest below, really shows the true transformation. The skin underneath has great texture, some good color. And this has some good texturing on it as well, the shirt. And let's look at his jacket. His jacket, first of all, there's a few things going on. One, you have a lot of rips and tears where you assume this happened from the transformation. Some, you can actually see his skin below it where it ripped it. Some, it's just old and worn. You see some pockets, some folds. And then the color on this, it's this off-white with this black shadowing. which I think is good. It's perfect. It's not too clean, but it's not too dirty, so you don't recognize that it's a lab coat anymore. Here's his arms and fingers. As I said with his feet, very skinny appendages, very bone-like structure. You can see all the different segments in his fingers, and then the awesome claws. Good length on those. I think that was perfect. Check out his tail. What's interesting about his tail, there's a little bit of gloss on the rest of his body, but not the tail. And I think that was deliberate, and I think it has something to do with the biology of lizards or reptiles. I'm not sure. But this is completely texturized, kind of this spine aspect going on the back, a little bit lighter green color depending on the light that you look at it in. Here's his portrait. Certain parts of his portraits are really good. It kind of looks like a T-Rex a little bit. Has that same scaly skin, a little bit of layering on it. His eyes are done really well. I like his orange eyes, beady. His teeth look a little bit like plastic. I think that was an opportunity there. And from the front, as I said, he doesn't look as fierce, only when you're looking at him from the side. His tongue, where it connects, it's not like nowadays where some of the statues you look at look like they have an open throat. Here he clearly doesn't. His tongue looks good. They could use some texture, maybe a little bit more moist effect on that. The inside of the mouth, hard to get some pics here, but definitely some opportunity in there. The detail's just a little bit lacking. So really quick, it's just kind of a no-brainer to me. The paint is not wow, but it's not bad, and the sculpt is exactly the same. So I think it's a right in the middle. It's very nice. It's a 3 out of 5. Nothing that blows me away. It's really the concept of this piece that makes me love it so much. But overall, it doesn't make me love it enough to give it a fantastic score. I think it's a very nice piece. I think it's a 3 out of 5. It's not one of those pieces I am tied to for the rest of my life, but with having a Spidey collection, I think it is essential to have this if you have a Spider-Man collection. And that's all I have today. So appreciate you guys watching. Here are some videos and playlists of some other Spider-Man stuff. Make sure to click on those. And if you haven't subscribed, hit that extreme logo to subscribe. Otherwise, I will talk to you tomorrow. Take care.